Dr. Kim Lannon, and I am here with.
What?
I've
been so good this morning.
You've been very supportive. I am so high on this chair today. Do you see that? I'm like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fix that.
Kind of by design.
Well, it was a little. I felt like I was on the rafters, like my head was hitting the ceiling. So, good morning. I didn't introduce you today.
It's fine.
I didn't introduce you because I just didn't. People have actually asked me in the last week if we could have a split screen because they'd like to see what you look like.
I don't think that's important.
And I said, well, it is my show, so
That's right.
I can do whatever I want.
And at the beginning, as I told you, I can participate as much or as little as you like.
Well, could you participate in a way this week that doesn't annoy me?
That I can't promise.
So our conversation this morning has been you said you were helping me shed.
Giving you the tools to shed.
Giving me the tools to shed bullshit.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I need the tools to shed bullshit.
Yeah.
Because, the topic of the day, as I jokingly said to you, is going to be the soul sucking of the soul suckers of life. We're going to talk about there are soul suckers in life. And
I've had this conversation like 3 times in the last 2 days.
Well, I've had it a lot in the last week, and it just keeps coming because there's so many soul suckers.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, the first thing I want to come back to is last week at the beginning of the show before you and I just didn't get along.
Get along. We're having a discussion.
Part of the soul sucking.
Yeah.
Was you said that you got into a tiff with your primary or somebody.
Your physician's assistant.
Your PA.
Yeah, but I forget what.
Was it about like a diabetes drug, Ozempic? It was something related. I don't know.
No, my
body sucking drug. I don't know.
I did my blood work.
Oh, okay.
Before I went to my checkup.
Yes.
Not checkup, a follow-up.
Follow-up, yeah.
And my blood sugar was not good. And so she came in and stared at me, basically. She gave me the U treatment. I said, I know it's all my fault because I unilaterally stopped taking a statin. So
I told you not to do that, just on your own unilaterally.
You said not to do it?
No, I said don't stop it abruptly like that. And then 3 weeks after you stopped it or something like that, you said, you said, I stopped it. And I'm like, why would you just do that? And like, because I decided, that's right. Because you told me, no, it wasn't. I said, oh my God, 3 weeks ago. And you're like, no, like.
Because everyone hates the statin.
Months ago.
Said, maybe I don't need this.
Okay, but we have soul sucking. So this is what some of my clients do. They will go and they'll hear me say something or they'll hear something and they'll be like, they'll run with it. And next thing I know, I'm like, they'll give me 7 symptoms that they've been having like for 6 weeks. And I'll be like, well, did this change? And they're like, oh no, I stopped this thing. And I'm like, why'd you do that? They're like, well, because I was thinking that when you said this, that I would do that. And I'm like, oh my God.
I know it was dumb.
Like, like this is not a direct, this is what people do. People don't listen. They just.
She's really good though.
I know. We like her.
Yeah.
That's why I was surprised that because she and I align. And I like the fact that she stared at you with that look that is my look. Because you deserve that.
And she said, sometimes that's good because people realize that they need what they stopped. He goes, yes, that's exactly where I am right now.
So how high was your sugar?
The cholesterol was really high.
Oh, I thought you said sugar.
Well, sugar was 5.8, wasn't.
Why? You are
why?
Taking stuff for that. It should not be a thing. 5.8.
Okay. It's 5.5 the last time.
It's still too high.
It's 5.5. It was 5.8 before. That's why we get on that and the metformin, which you went after last week too.
I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't get a full chance because we had other topics that were soul sucking me.
Yeah.
They're still soul sucking me.
So I self-medicated and it was a mistake.
But you know what? It's always interesting. This is what also clients do to me. They won't tell me because they know that they shouldn't tell me because they're doing their own experiment and that they know that if they told me, the answer would be different than the thing they're about to do. So they do it. And then, it's the do first, ask for forgiveness later.
Well,
this is what you did.
If the blood work had been better, I wouldn't have told her. I just had no way out.
Jesus. This is like see, my topic of soul sucking is good. This is
Yeah.
another soul suck to us as medical practitioners, the soul sucking of us, that we try to put you on the right track and then you
Yep.
just derail yourself, and then who's to blame? We are. It's all your fault.
No, it's the first thing I said. I guess it's my fault. It's on me.
Well, clearly, because
Yeah.
I certainly didn't tell you that, and she didn't tell you
No.
that. So, but I love the fact that she gave you the look.
Yeah.
Of like, what are you doing?
Yeah, she's good. She's good. She doesn't hold back. But she's open to stuff. You know, when you and I talked earlier about my medications,
Yes.
she took the suggestions and we changed some things.
And that was correct.
Yeah.
That one was spot on.
Mm-hmm.
But never in my passing with you did I say stop your statin.
No, you didn't. I'm not blaming it on you.
No, but we talked about statins. But yeah.
But everybody hates statins.
Well, I understand that. But there's things that you can do.
Yeah.
But we didn't talk about that because you unilaterally went, let's take ourselves off of it.
Yeah.
Hence the soul sucking topic of the day. That's a soul suck.
Hey, I have Google. I can self-medicate.
I
know. It's horrible. I fell victim to it.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be that I would say, don't listen to TikTok, but now I'm on TikTok, so you have to listen to TikTok because I'm on TikTok. So if you're listening to me, there's a couple of people that I listen to that are really good on TikTok, but by and large, ever since I've jumped on and started rebranding and doing some other things, wow, there's some crap out there. Be mindful, consumer beware. Talk about the soul suck of life, because there is some stuff out there on
social media.
This will make you pretty. Yeah. This will make you thin. This will make you skin fine. This will make you smarter. No.
Social media and Google is a fun house.
Well, it's not really.
Everything's distorted.
Well,
you gotta triangulate everything.
I have to say, it's not necessarily Google. It's more Wikipedia.
Okay.
It's Google that goes to Wikipedia, because Wikipedia and AI now are the first things that pop up, and you're like, oh no, that's not a truth. You know, I still have books, an actual book on my shelf that I will go to and go, oh, that's not right. And what they're saying, you know, like an anatomy book, or like when I want to show pictures of something to a client, like, hey, here's a, femur, and here's what that tendon's supposed to look like, or here's what your brain is supposed to look like. Usually I can get good images on Google, but not always.
Yeah.
You always get the death version, like some gory, awful picture.
Yep.
So anyway, here we are again this week. So I just have to say that last week it was a soul suck.
Okay.
Yes. And what I mean by that is that there are things in life that can soul suck you if you let them. And people that can soul suck you, hence our conversation when I came in today. And that you were trying to explain to me, and I will use justify and rationalize certain people's behaviors, but I understood what you were saying, but still doesn't make it okay.
I think that's a mischaracterization of what I did.
Oh, you didn't do that? What did you do?
I offered insights.
Okay. Potato.
No.
Yeah, you did offer insight, but it's a reason it's a reason to explain away certain behaviors.
I wasn't explaining it away.
Oh, okay. Oh God, we're right back in it.
Yeah.
I love this. Let's loop right back to last week. Let's do it.
Oh, I wasn't.
We're already having better conversation now than we did last week. This is good. We haven't talked in a week.
I know.
Why is that, Lou? Lou and I usually at least have some little in between. We did not talk all week.
I did general talk for 20 years. I'm used to it. That's what I did for a living.
Okay, no, but whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So here we are. I'm very hesitant to go into the quick soul suck that I want to talk about, because I have to, but I am going to say it.
By the way,
I am
just to cap last week.
Oh God.
You dragged me in.
I did not drag you in.
Yes, you did.
You drag yourself in.
No, I tried to stay quiet.
You stay quiet, but then when you open up your mouth, you say not so.
I wasn't going to open my mouth.
You don't say the most. I can't find the word. You don't say the most eloquent things at times when it comes to that topic, which it wasn't about that topic. It was about mental health, and you had a hard time with that one. And it's okay, Blue. We forgive you. But if we go there again,
but that was a component of that mental health picture.
No.
Yes, it is.
No, I'm going to stop because I'm going to go there and then it's going to get into a thing and then it's going to be soul sucking and then it will be bad. So see, look at cats. Here we go. Ready? Here's a soul suck of my life. I leave here last week and it goes right into the car. And what do I hear? That I am a childless cat lady who's miserable, who has no stake in this country. And you know what I say to that? I can't say it on air. So mental health for me is that, yes, I am a childless cat lady. And as I said on my TikTok, I will go there. Guess what? I am a childless, and none of your business why I'm childless, because it's none of anybody's business. But mental health wise, it's very important that anyone that has that choice or has the reasons is that way. And I am happy to say that there are childless dog ladies and horse ladies and, ferret ladies and cat daddies and dog daddies that are all childless. And you know what? We all have a stake in the country. And I can say that I actually serve this country over and over for the past 30 years because I contribute to the mental health of this country and to veterans and to active duty and to Navy SEALs and to people who have their legs and arms blown off and people who have PTSD. And I could go on. And then I have to take a breath because you know why? Who are you to tell me that I have no stake in this country because you also think that, not you, but you also, say terrible, awful things about your wife, not you. Soul sucking.
Here's my question.
Oh, here we go.
Why does this individual have access to your soul?
Because he hit a nerve.
Yeah.
And it's rare, as you know, to hit nerves with me. And that one hit because it's, I'm a human being. And I think that there has to be some. So here's what I practice, what I preach, as you know. So in advocacy mode, I had to sit on my agitation of that man speaking those words and then continuing on and then backpedaling and reworking the words and having other people do it for him. And it still came down to the same thing, that he meant the same thing. Doesn't matter how you sliced it. And then he continued on with other things that just made me agitated. And then I thought, oh, his poor wife. But it hit there and I had to rework it in my head to the point where finally on Sunday, I got to a point, Wednesday to Sunday, that I know why it hit the nerve, and here's why. And you asked me a good question, and this is why. And I'm being like, this is for the mental health of all the people who feel the soul suck. Because it's a gaslight. It's a mental health gaslight to do that to someone. It's taking and using a statement or statements to control someone through a tactic that's an emotional abusive tactic to then control them by disenfranchising them and disempowering them, if it works, to then make it so that they don't feel that they have the power. And you do that long enough, like in a relationship. So we have a country relationship, right? I have a country relationship to my country, or I have a relationship to you, or I have a relationship to someone else. Someone does that long enough to you, you buy into it, you lose your sense of self-efficacy and self-advocacy. And so therefore, in anything, we can relate this to any kind of relationship, whether it's you and your boss, or you and your company, or you and your husband or wife or significant other, whatever it is, it's still a gaslight. It's a technical way of gaslighting, but at a very sick, sadistic, like 3 standard deviations away. Like, it's not your typical gaslight, but it took me to Sunday to go, aha, I know why it's really rubbing me, because gaslight. And I know gaslighters really well because I grew up around them. And it's like, oh, that's why it rubbed me. And the fact that, all the things I just said about my credential list about how do I not have a stake in this country just because I don't have children? Because it gaslights you into believing that if people don't have the efficacy, the self-belief that they have value, it goes right to those people that feel like they are valueless, or that they need X man, fill in the blank, to be worthwhile, or to have like these purposes in life. So, don't come at me with that and think that's going to be a good mental health way to like maneuver me. But it did set me back on my heels. But that's what I came to, because it is a gaslight. And there you are again with your quietness, Lou. It is a gaslight. Want me to give you the definition of gaslighting? I'm
not denying anything.
Oh, okay. So why do you stop speaking? We had this conversation last week. You are always speaking, and now we go to this is not a political thing. This is a gaslight. This is just about emotional abuse of a person to a large group of very generalized people.
Because two things.
Oh, here we go.
What's the appropriate response to being gaslit?
Well, are you asking what my appropriate response is?
Yeah.
Well, anytime someone gaslights, so it's narcissism. It usually comes from the other person who's gaslighting you is narcissistically doing that because they have a feeling of less self-worth, right? So my response to gaslighters, typically when I'm making sure I realize it, but I was so in the moment last week, is that I always advocate for myself with no expectation of change, which I end up doing, but not to him directly, but I did. So, but it's usually you either no response or you respond with something that has to do with saying something that states your point or gives your, this is how I see it. These are my facts. This is how I, feel. And I'm not moving off of this stance, period. And then you let it go. And that's what I did. But it took me till Sunday to figure out it took me to Sunday to figure out why I was so annoyed. I mean, I knew I was annoyed because on the surface, it's obvious, don't call me. Well, I think it wasn't even the childless cat lady. It was I had no stake in this country because I didn't have children. Like, who says that? Like, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. That's a bad thing. And do you know how many, not to mention, have you met cat people? Like, yes. I could just say for all my cat lover people that do follow my show most of the time, because I, have my affiliations, like dog people are one thing and horse people are one thing. You don't piss off cat people. I'm sorry, but you just don't realize it's a whole breed, and I'm not kidding. It's a whole breed of I know you have the cats that you never talk about because they don't exist in your life. But it's a big thing for that's like it says so much, and there's so much psychology behind like the manipulation behind that comment. And I'm chalking it up to the fact that, and we just had this conversation about the opposite side, someone being older, but the immaturity and the lack of, I'm going to say the lack of environmental resources around that person to educate them well enough to actually not speak that way. Ignorance, if you think it, shut your mouth. If you really think that, that's not going to help you because, I don't remember who said it on like a news program last week, but it was funny because it was a Republican, not about politics, but it was a Republican that came out and said, do you understand the amount of unleashing that this happened with cat people? Yeah. And you said it over and over again, and now you keep talking about it, and it got worse as the week went on. It was like, shut up.
So most of us feel
like, oh my God, you just unleashed a whole wrath of,
Exactly.
Well, and I think it backfired for him.
So at some point, well, yes. Which was my point last week.
Which point? Because
nobody's paying attention to this man. So
people are paying attention to him.
Paying attention to him.
Okay, well, I disagree because anyway, but that's not what that's about. It's more about like the pervasiveness of how many, not just in that realm, but just the pervasiveness of gaslighting and soul sucking that happens around us. Whether, you're talking about social media, and I'm not talking just politics. I'm talking like the product placements that you watch. I was, saying like, here you watch TikTok, and I'm like, now I'm like, oh, well, I wouldn't listen to half the crap, but I'm like, oh, but my stuff is all based in facts. So now it's like, how do you discern between what's real? And I see stuff out there like all the time, like go to Ozempic, right? Ozempic and all the, the weight loss drugs. There's people that are out there that will be like, so backstory, there's a whole bunch of very specific kind of rules that you have to follow when you're on those medications for weight loss, for instance, okay, to make them work correctly. But people, do their thing, as I've talked about. But if you get on TikTok, there's like women and men who are mostly women I've seen, but they'll make these recipes and I just die. They're like, and I made this thing, and it's like this thing that has like thousands and thousands of calories, and they're sitting there like, and I've lost 500 pounds. And I'm like, this did not happen. You didn't eat like that to get like that. There's no way, because it's just so much misinformation. And I'm like, and then people will ask me, that I have 13 people in my practice right now on stuff, and then I have people in my personal life, and they'll ask me, they'll be like, did you see that on TikTok? And I'm like, yes, that is not a thing. Like, do not follow that. Or it's like, high like garbage food, like high levels of junk and processed crap in your food, and kind of like the person that the nurse practitioner that told my client that, anything from the ground is bad. Like that's just not a thing. And then I actually had not one, but I actually had 3 or 4 people ask me legitimately did that nurse practitioner really say that? And I'm like, yeah, she really did. And it wasn't just like hearsay from the client that told me. I actually did follow up and had to make sure, because I want to make sure that I was, not just buying into my client heard that and that was, nope, they actually did. So I imagine if one person's out there saying stuff like that, and you go to TikTok or you go to Instagram Reels or anything and you hear this stuff, you're like, oh my God, you're getting gaslit.
Yep.
You're actually being, emotionally maneuvered into something else that isn't true, so it's so important about knowing facts versus fiction and really, I always say triangulate, and that triangulate your information. There's my opinion, there's your opinion, then there's like 500 other opinions, and that's the other part of the triangle. Make sure you get them all so that you find your best information and don't just listen to one particular thing. Even with me, I tell my clients, I'm like, if you do not think I'm right or you don't believe me, please feel free to always check. But people get so, as you know,
it's critical thinking.
People get so upset about, I have patients that feel like that they're doing something dishonorable by going to someone else to ask because they're dishonoring their one treater, which I always say, I will not take offense ever.
Well, some treaters do. So I understand
that response comes from, it's an old school response of, I'm the one that knows. I'm like, well, I know what I know, but you might find something else and know something else. And please, if you do, let me know. Right. And I think that's, it's appreciated. I certainly have treaters in my life that do not like it when I question them. And I can tell that it's annoying to them because I have one that will say, you know too much. And they're annoyed with that. And I'm like, yeah, and I don't see them very often because I find them annoying. But they're in the practice, and I'm always like, I don't want to see that person because I really don't have the time for that. Because I ask questions, because I critically think, because I don't just take the word for it and then become one of the people that comes into my office sometimes with, oh, I'm on 7 medications, but I don't know what any of them are and what they do. Because that's like a 2-session process of, now we have to review and we have to see how is that impacting your mental health? How is that impacting your physical body? How does that impact your cognition? We have to go through every single section because they don't know, and their doctors are, and at the end of the day, it's always, oh, my doctor didn't tell me that. I know, right? Because you take this one thing and it has the impact on your medical, like say your statins, right? But then you might not realize that also can make you accumulate that in your system to the point where you have depression. And if you are male, that was pretty funny. I love it. See where my head is today. Yeah. If you have a male gene, if you're male, that might have more ramifications, especially if you add in a certain food like grapefruit. So if you don't know those things, and because I have someone that just came in last week after the show, and they're taking one of the weight loss drugs, and they had a grapefruit. I'm like, ooh, you can't have grapefruit on that. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, no grapefruit. And they're like, oh, but nobody told them. You can't have it on that particular thing. So, so it's not that I don't think it's, in those cases, I wouldn't say it's an intentional soul sucker or an intentional gaslight, but just, the word fits this week so beautifully, because I think that it's just misinformation. It's misleading. It's misguiding. It's just, whether it's intentional or not. Sometimes it is intentional, but sometimes it's just for lack of time. And also the medical model just trains people very differently than I was trained, in terms of, I started in the medical model, as you know, but then I went, we're going to go over to the holistic natural side and do whole system naturopathy. Naturopathy, by the way, is not just like that, hoodoo, voodoo, right. It combines them.
Scientifically based.
It's scientifically based. It's not just a soft science. It's actually all medical based, but it's also then looking at the whole system, because you can't do mental health really without looking at the whole body and the whole system working at the same time. But I think it's a disservice if you are not an advocate. So to come all the way back around to the original question that you were saying is, how do you handle the gaslight? Is you advocate, and without the expectation. Do not have an expectation that you're going to change the other person. just means that you've advocated for yourself. And if it's a medical situation and you don't like the answer that you're getting, I have 2 clients that currently have very severe cancer, and I've encouraged both of them to get second opinions, because I know one specifically, because I went and got the second opinion for them because I took their information, went and did a colleague consult, and they were like, oh, there's treatment for this. Whereas their place where they're getting treatment, suspended treatment and put them on hospice and said, yeah, we don't have any more treatment for this. Whereas this other side who's not invested in, I won't say where this one side is like very notorious for this problem. But this other side was like, there's so much treatment for that, and that isn't necessary. So I'm bridging that gap. But it's like, if you didn't know the resources, and especially traditional psychology and psychologists who don't have the sort of additional training, to have a stake in this country, just saying, if they don't have that training, then they don't give that information. They just say, I hope you feel better, and then send you on your way till next week. And that's,
yeah,
it's such a shame, because I wish there are a whole bunch of me type practitioners out there, but there's not enough of us. There's a lot more. There's way more of the sort of run of the mill, generic, treaters that just give you the feedback and say, I'm sorry you feel that way, and I'll see you next week. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but it misses a lot. And so, it goes into the soul suck. Because it can be very soul sucking, because you can waste a lot of time doing treatment if you don't do the well-being model. So this is another question that came up around this, is that, how long do people stay in therapy? So some people stay in therapy for 6 times and then they're out, whatever. That's not a thing for me. And right. A lot of my colleagues, it's lifelong. Most of everybody I know that I work with, they have clients that are lifers. And by that, I mean, it's not because they have these massive psychological issues. It's because we are much more inclined to be in the well-being model now than the psychiatric fix problem, get out of problem, and then be done. It's about continuous accumulation of well-being model over lifetime. And so what that looks like for each person is very different. So, it's not necessarily the traditional right at the beginning. Maybe the first year or two is really figuring out this massive problem that this person has. Then it becomes into more of like life coaching and holistic, how to take care of yourself on a whole, which we start from the very beginning, but that's where it moves into to do maintenance, because I think people need maintenance. And most people talk about, like, I go away for 2 weeks is my limit. And then after 2 weeks, I feel like I need to talk to you, even if I don't have like some big thing. I just want to say like my stuff and get your thoughts on it. Now, I always am mindful of being, with my clients to say, we don't want to breed codependence. Well, they be dependent or dependency on me, that I have to be the one. So trying to give them enough skills that they don't have to see me every week. Some people see me every week. Totally fine. Some people see me every 2 weeks. Some people see me once a month. Some people see me every 2 months. But it's really tailored to them and what their needs are, where they're at. And then some people take time off. They'll go to college for the whole semester, then come back and see me 3 or 4 times during a break. And then, that kind of thing. Or I have people that travel. Like I have a couple diplomats that I see in Washington. They travel. So when they're back in town, they see me and that kind of thing. So it just depends. But I think it's important that it goes back again to how to appropriately take care of your mental health issues without feeling like there's this stigma attached to, oh, you're only supposed to do that for X amount of time. You're not supposed to do that. And there's doctors out there on TikTok and on social media that will be like, oh, sometimes it will get to a point where you just don't see people anymore because it's just past the point. Now, there are past the point points, because ethically, you don't just need to keep seeing someone just to keep seeing them. But when people have continuing, ongoing issues, like adjustment issues.
Like everybody?
Yeah. So, but there is an ethical guideline around what we do around, like, you just don't keep people in therapy just to do that, right?
To me, it's always been a reset space.
Right.
Plus a place where I can have conversations and thoughts and feelings that I can't have other
with
places.
Me.
Huh?
That you can't have with me.
Yeah. Unlike last week.
Well, we can have that conversation anytime you want. It might not go well.
Let me suggest this, and I'm going to pull out another political example because it's on the other side.
Oh my God.
No, because it's on the other side, and it's typical. It would have triggered me the way you got triggered by JD Vance, right? In the past, it would have
I
triggered
didn't
me,
say
and it
his
has
name.
triggered me in the past.
Guess
I
we're saying his
understand. We all
name.
know who you're talking about.
Dewey.
Yep.
JD.
Less than 10 minutes after the rumor came out that the president was withdrawing from the race,
Yes.
less than 10 minutes, a major publication, who I won't justify with a name, came out with an article about how basically, if you don't vote for Kamala Harris, you're racist and sexist.
Wow, that's quite a
Exactly.
That's quite a.
In the headline, by the way.
Oh my God.
Fighting racism and sexism.
I think I heard about that. I don't think I saw it,
Yeah.
but I think I heard about it.
Yeah. Now,
and then it kind of went by the wayside because it was like poo-pooed after it because it had a big. I remember
because it's someone being an idiot,
right? Well, it's someone being. It's the gaslight. It's the quick.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a quick jump to the extreme maneuver to get you to believe something,
Exactly.
to get you to do something. It's the exact same thing. Of course, that would trigger somebody.
But what I've got through this after doing all my work with that type of thing is that I'm very stingy about my mental energy. And I read that and my temperature started to rise because it was like I said,
childless cat lady.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a trigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's the only reason you can think of that I wouldn't vote for her, but that's a whole nother story. But it was just kind of, at that point, it's like, I'm not giving any mental energy to this. It's not worth it.
Right.
And just keep walking.
Right. So.
Because I know no one is that's not going to carry a lot of weight.
No. That's the thing.
It's extreme. JD Vance is extreme. It doesn't carry a lot of weight.
But the thing with JD Vance is carried a lot of weight because it hasn't stopped, because he keeps going.
Oh, because he's an idiot. And most of these media outlets will keep going too.
I did not say that. You said it.
I said it. Yes,
I did not say that.
Yes.
I can say, what I will say clinically is that he's 3 standard deviations out of the norm. He's not 2 and not 1. He's 3. So there's a bell curve. And usually there's people like,
have you seen Hillbillyology?
Don't get me started on oh God, wait, I have the page. I screenshotted the page because I couldn't believe what I was reading. I would not ever purchase that, by the way, because I wouldn't give him money to save my life.
No, just watch the movie.
But I did not, but the book.
But it tells you where this is coming from.
Well,
it's informed you of his opinion. If that makes sense. So what was I trying to say? So,
well, I know that it is informed his opinion, and I get that. I also
informed trauma.
No, we're not giving him an out that it's trauma.
I'm not giving him an out.
No. Ignorance is not getting an out. No.
I understand.
No, we're not doing that. But I get where your example of like being told or you read something and it's like, wait a second, that is just so far-fetched, right? Like, that does not mean that. Well, that's like me. I can go to a spot where talk about soul sucking and gaslighting and really being put on the spot. When I was in my graduate program, I won't name which one because there were a couple. As I've told you, I have several degrees because I have no stake in this country.
It's because you're a cat lady.
That's right. And that implies I'm stupid too, apparently. Yeah. And miserable. Don't forget I'm miserable. Just can't. Oh God, there's so many things I could go with. But when I was in one of my grad programs, there was a teacher, there was a professor who still is working, and she was insistent, and she was not well liked, and she was not well loved. And we were a pretty diverse class. So I can say that right out of the gate. We were diverse. But she had a point every time we came into class for the entire time I was in the program. She made sure that she told she was not white, but she made sure she told everybody in the class that was white that we were all racist and that we needed to deal with that. And she point blank said that we were racist. And I used to fume in my head when she'd say it. And then I was like, I challenged her several times. So did other people. Because I was wanting to hear her reasoning. Like, it wasn't a challenge of you're wrong. It wasn't a fight. She was actually able to sit and have a conversation about it. So I got to a point where I actually understood what she was saying. I totally disagreed with her, but she was making it okay for herself enough that it was okay to say it. And therefore, because she could back it with these things, because one of her reasons is because she had relationship and good friendship with Mother Teresa. And I was like, oh my God.
Isn't she
dead?
Isn't that basically a racist comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And
but this,
isn't that self-annihilating?
so
Yeah.
this was,
Yeah.
yes. So, but this was what I'm saying is
Yeah.
like to sit down and have that, but that's what she felt. It's these things that are so provocative that are I'm calling them soul suckers today, that if you put your mental energy into these things, and I was way younger then, and it really rubbed me that, who are you you don't know me just because I'm, she just put it out there, and she wasn't doing it to, teach a point in a class. She wasn't doing it. It wasn't like a class on racism, and it wasn't a class on, and it was just her opinion to come out and just say, and she made it a point to very, very much disenfranchise people in the class. And I was very resilient to it because I won't say why, but
you just described the social commentary in this country for the last 25 years.
But there were some people in the class that just did not manage it well at all.
Yeah.
And the fights that would happen, I'd sit there in class like, oh my God, this is the whole class would be me just watching and other people just watching like the banter of, and she was enjoying it. And I thought, oh, this is so bad. And the school knew, and they didn't do anything about it. And I was like, and she still works there. And I'm like, oh God. So occasionally I like look up, and she keeps publishing, and she keeps writing, and she's very well decorated, and she's been honored by this person, that person, all highfalutin too. And I'm like, oh my God.
But this was a lesson I learned from Colin Kaepernick. I got sucked into that big time. And it was just like, got me nowhere.
Because there's no reason to get sucked into it.
Exactly.
Right.
That was the lesson I learned from that.
Right. Which is why so here it goes back to, what can you do when you have someone soul sucking you or gaslighting you? So as soon as I found a way to advocate for myself, which is what I did on Sunday, then it felt better, even though I'm making jokes about it today, just because it's funny.
If you have someone in your life, or we talk about medical issues, that's a different thing. If you have someone in your life who's affecting your life directly, then obviously other steps probably have to be taken.
Right.
Social media or general news flow today, just keep scrolling.
Except for the childless cat lady comment.
Yeah, exactly.
No. But so here's the thing. I agree with you, obviously, because 99.99, like we're at 100% of like the stuff that's out there is crap. Like, and even if you believe in it or if it offends you, it's like, it's like whatever. But, there's some comments that just, that one just landed, and I just couldn't let it ride.
I know, yeah.
Couldn't let that one ride. But I did for Wednesday to Sunday. I made it to Sunday without saying a word, watching other people say words. And then it finally dawned on me that I didn't want to do what everyone else was doing, because that wasn't what it was. It wasn't just because it wasn't going to be heard about, if you watch social media, right? The commentary was just the clip being played back, then other clips that had happened during the week being played back of him talking more, digging his hole bigger, with other commentators doing it with people with their cats. And I'm like, that's lovely and it's cute, and there's some funny ones and whatever. But then I was like, there's a mental health issue here. And I kept saying, this is rubbing me, not just because I am these things, minus the miserable and the no stake in this country. But then it was like, oh, it's because, and this is my recommendation, figure out before you say anything about what you really feel, figure out what it is. You got to do some introspection, because it really took me that long to figure out why it was really rubbing me. And man, it took me, I left here on Wednesday. It happened right as soon as I walked out, and I was like, and it just set me. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Sunday morning, I was like, oh my God, I know what it is. And I think it was because I was watching like Face the Nation, and it hit me. And I was like, oh, it's the gaslight.
I was so removed. I have been so removed for years from news in general. I just don't take it in. My feeds are washed of it. I don't take it in all that much. But I got sucked back in after the assassination attempt. And it's just stunning, the state of news these days. It's just stunning what people are feeding on. Talk about you are what you eat. Mentally, you are what you eat too. And people, there's a house near me that I drive by, and every night CNN is on, and it's like, and it's like on constantly 24/7. It's like, how can
that's like, I grew up at my house, Fox was on all the time. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. Every station. That's why it's not on anymore. You know what's on at my house currently that I leave on for my cats in my childless cat lady home?
TV for cats?
No. Oh. Right now, women's volleyball at the Olympics. because I have been glued because Simone Biles and Suni Lee and Jordan Childs and Hesley and Jade Carey have rocked this world and brought home a gold. And that is my jam.
Yep.
Because they did it. And the men's team, and then the swimmers, and some of the amazing stories from the Brazilian women that are on the gymnastics team that have never been able to podium. And then it's just like, it's been amazing. So I'd rather watch that.
Okay. Let me start this debate.
Okay.
No.
Here we go.
Beach volleyball. Best athletes on the planet.
Shut it. No.
Best athletes on the planet.
No. Really?
Yep.
Do you know that Navy SEALs compare themselves to gymnasts and gymnasts to Navy SEAls because of the training that goes into it? No. All hail the 6
How
foot.
many backflips are Navy SEAls doing?
It's not about that. It's about the conditioning.
Yep.
Back in my good day, I could go down the gauntlet of BUDS training. Even my own husband says that. He's like, you would have been a SEAL. Because I could have, but now, no.
I'm not denigrating anybody by saying that.
But I know I love the volleyball players because who doesn't want to be 6'5", blonde, perfect body and be able to like slap a ball over that net? Great, but I wouldn't say it's
jumping, running, hand-eye in sand. By the way,
I
mean,
right.
It's impressive.
Minus being on a 4-inch wide beam that's 4 feet off the ground, doing flips and twists and things like that.
Not denigrating them at all.
I know. I'm just saying I would disagree that it's the most, like over gymnastics. That doesn't mean that I would pick gymnastics as the only sport that whatever, but I don't think volleyball is the one. I do appreciate it though. That's why it's on at my house because I was watching it before I came. Ping pong has to be ping pong that's really talk about hand-eye coordination. I was watching that last night.
I'm watching it too.
I'm like, I would be done after less than a second because I just giggle through the whole thing.
Except I know what this is going to sound like, and I hesitate to go there, but it needs to be said.
Here we go.
Ping pong, the oldest Olympic athlete I've ever seen. I forget what country she was from, but she had to be 60.
Yeah, 60. Oh God,
it's just stunning.
Well,
I don't expect to see it.
I would imagine I'd have to go and look because I want to say, no, I was going to say maybe some of the marathon runners, but no, because even in the Olympics, I mean, there's marathoners that are really much more up in age, but I don't know if there are any.
But I'm waiting for the breakdancing. That's what I'm waiting for.
Well, we were watching America's Got Talent last night, right? Yeah. And there were 4 pogo stick aficionados, and John said, that should be an Olympic sport. And I was like, and they're really good. And I was like, well, if they make breakdancing a sport, why not? Because they took out other things and put that in. So, I just don't get that. But, whatever. Breakdancing is hard, by the way.
I'm not saying it's not hard.
But whatever. Ping pong's in.
3-on-3 basketball I was watching the other night.
I did see a second of it, but I really didn't care. I care about ice skating. Wrong season, but I care about ice skating. Oh, diving. Swimming, tennis, running, gymnastics, right? Volleyball. And I just look at them going, I want those abs. I used to have those abs. Oh, God. Okay, so back to the topic.
Yes.
Okay. So, but
soul sucking.
Soul sucking is when you find if the TV
keep control over your soul.
Well, yeah, but so here's the thing is a lot of people don't have the ability because they really don't. They have vulnerability, which is why people get sucked into cults. People get sucked into culty things because they don't have the self-worth, self-esteem, and they don't have the resources. That's what I was talking about last week, that they don't have the environmental or the educational or both resources or all the resources enough internally to make a informed critical thought process decision. They just go off of somebody telling them this as opposed to going, do I really, and that's with anything. Anybody tells you that. That's why I said, we can put this across the board. It's not just in what we were talking about last week. It's about anything. It's don't just, if someone tells you, I was talking about this a few weeks ago. Someone is telling a set of students that I know a certain thing that I know is completely not fact-based and it's completely I could debunk it left, right, front, center, backwards. And students are struggling because they know they actually have gone and done their research to know that when I have given them the information is actually correct. But I didn't get all upset about it. I was like, well, that's incorrect information. Here's what I know. Here's what I can give you. And I can only give you the facts that I know. But they're struggling because they're in a position where they have to take a class from two different people who are teaching two different things, but they know one is factually based correct and one is not. And so they're struggling because they have to like answer one way on an exam and one way on another exam. But that's a soul suck because and I said, hey, and I likened it to, this is a business plan. This is what happens in business all the time. You may not agree with the thing, but in order for you to succeed, you have to be able to move forward with it, because if you won't get very far with rocking certain boats on something, or if you disagree with someone. And I unfortunately have seen over the years people disagree, which I'm always about advocating, but knowing that if you advocate, you might not get what you wanted. You might not get what you need, but the point would be advocate without the expectation that you're going to get that. If you get it, great. If you don't, then at least you've advocated. But unfortunately, there's always that, just like in business world, just like in school, just like in, whatever you're doing, there's retaliation fear. And there is, and unfortunately people get into the soul suck of being retaliated against for speaking up, or having a differing thought, or challenging a person who believes that they're really right and can't concede the point. It's unfortunate. Or doesn't want to concede the point because their ego's in the way. And so it's like, oh, there's so many things there. And again, it comes back to it's gaslight. Yep. It essentially is, and gaslight gets overused a lot inappropriately and incorrectly, because people use it just in terms of like, you say something you disagree, that means it's a gaslight. That's not what gaslighting is. It's a specific tactic, and there's a whole list of them that come with it. It's an emotional tactic to get you to mess with the mind of another person, to get them to either change, back down, maneuver in, get them to do what you want. Like and that's why I was saying it's like when you do it on a mass scale, it's like how you build a cult, the Jim Jones thing. It's like how do you build a cult? You get people that are really vulnerable, who don't have the voice to do the triangulation and don't critically think, to come and pull right in. And you're like, oh my God. Yep, there's where you get the Jim Jones thing. If people don't know what that is, you can Google who Jim Jones is, because I'm not going into who Jim Jones is, but he was a cult leader that was a little off. It's
more difficult. Gaslighting and soul sucking is more difficult with people who have influence in your life. And I admit that. And you have to deal with that a certain way, which is why I feel like people that don't have influence in your life, just, you can't take it on. It's my necessary hard and unnecessary hard. In your family, the soul sucking is a necessary hard. You have to deal with it. In the media,
you don't have to deal with it. Well, yeah. Well, when you're doing it in the so I would agree with you, yes, but I also disagree to some extent on some of the stuff when it comes to, I'm not talking just like media. Yeah, media, yes. But when it comes to things that might impact you. So for you, and I only speak for this just because you're bringing it up, as a man, it might not impact you the same way it would impact me as a female, and like all my female clients and all my female friends. We have a bigger stake in the fact that, there's a man that potentially could end up in the seat of being a president because Donald Trump dies. If he becomes president, if he dies, then we've got this man who espouses terrible, awful things about women. And then on top of it, terrible, awful things about his own wife. So it's like, whoa, and has no shame about it. So that impacts me, but it might not impact you. And does it impact me on a daily life basis? No, but it impacted me enough to be like, wait a second. If I didn't have the resiliency enough to not be gaslit, to figure it out, then I get pulled right into that. And then I don't feel good about myself. And that's what, it's such a great example of how, abusive relationships come to be. And talk about like, domestic violence. And it's like, it's a counter tactic, a counter terrorist attack on another person to essentially keep them held hostage in their own situation where they wouldn't likely be if they knew different. Not better, but different, or knew how to do something different. I know that sounds very extreme, but it's true. It's just one of those things that it's like, if you're in that scenario, we're not talking the generic scenarios. We're talking like, if you're in a situation where your husband says, well, although my wife is white, she's still a good mother. What? say that for the people in the back, because what did you just say? Now that impacts me, because how does that impact me? Not directly, but it impacts me in the fact that, do I want that person who's saying that thing along with all these other things to be a representation of me in the world and the things I do in terms of my next 4 years? No, I do not. I do not. And normally it wouldn't bother me, but that would bother me. I know. And Lou goes quiet, everybody. Lou goes quiet because Lou's just like, but I know that you don't believe in that. I know you don't believe that that's a thing, because you wouldn't do that. So, but you just like jump out because you don't want to have an opinion on it.
No, I don't want to take the heat for the opinion that I do have, which is it's a balancing act. Hopefully, my impression of the other side is that it's more monolithic in thought than my side is. But hopefully people are looking at this that don't agree with everyone in every position and every position of the people that you support. You don't agree with every position, but it's a balancing act. It's an equation. One side is an equation of policies, and the other side is an equation of policies. You got to make a choice between the two.
But I don't think that okay, so now here we go. So I really briefly, so we don't get down that rabbit hole. I don't really think that, and this is a good point around the gaslighting. I don't think both sides, and when it comes to politics, and this is like in relationships, that they're coming from they're not coming from policy. It's coming from emotion. It's like a relationship. It's like, you and your wife, or you and, you know what I mean? It's about multiple things. And if one thing really stands out more than another, you lose that thing. You don't focus on that thing. So you have to be really discerning, and you can't just blindly follow on any side to be able to not understand that there's tactics going on that move you. And that's in business, that's in relationships, that's in politics, that's in all things. And you really have to be able, like, to your point, balance it for sure for mental health, but being mindful that, there's some things out there that are, I don't think it's monolithic on this one. And it's very rare that I'll take to heart something that goes on.
Particular subject. No, and that's exactly my point about that subject. Nobody is listening to him on either side.
Well, except for that topic, they are
10%, 5%.
No, maybe. You and your percentages, your 80-20 rule. No,
it's the 80-20 rule.
No, it is not. No. There's way more people listening to that one than any other currently, and it's not going away because he keeps feeding it. They both keep feeding it.
Yeah.
I know you don't agree, but that's okay.
I don't give that any weight whatsoever.
I know. But so honestly, do you think that's because you don't give it any weight as a person, or because it's also because it doesn't impact you because you're male? And
no.
You don't care about it as much? If it was your daughter, if it was impacting your daughter, would it make a difference?
It's not impacting my daughter, and it won't impact my daughter.
Sure. Well,
this is rhetoric.
But if she ever wanted to be a childless,
the Christian right has been there forever. And had these opinions forever.
This isn't the Christian right. This is the extremist Christian right. Because I wouldn't knock the Christian right or just the right. This is like the extreme sides of either side.
Exactly my point.
This is extremes. Yep. But to the point of cults and soul sucking, right? Is when you get to those extremes and you have those things being espoused to people that are in mass quantities that are buying into it and believing it because they have that feeling of, you're speaking what I think and I'm disenfranchised and I don't have the power, but you have the power to speak for me. That's when it becomes a problem, that was what my concern was, that there was a huge gaslight going on of women last week and this week currently still. And I would never want to be married to a man that said, well, although she's white, she's still a good mother. What? And I know I just paraphrased that because it wasn't the exact, but it was close. It was close enough. Well, I'm sure somebody will say, that's not exactly what he said, but you know what I meant. Because what? Like, oh, God. So, but back to the hillbilly elegy.
I just feel like it's creating more angst than it deserves.
But this is because I think it's a male-female difference. I think if you're not a female, and then it's not going to create the same kind of angst. And I have a stake in the game because I have clients that have stake in the game. I have young women clients that it matters to, and I have young men clients that it matters to. And I think there's a demographic that feels soul-sucked by it.
So what do you think the rhetoric around old white men has been for 20 years?
Yeah, it's awful. hence my comment.
Living with it every day.
Are you saying that you're an old white man?
I am an old white man.
Well,
I'm not saying it. I am.
Okay. And so but do you espouse the things that go along with the typical rhetoric of the old white man? Right. That's my point. So you don't fall into that.
Yeah.
You don't, so it doesn't impact you. There's none of those things impact you, but those things that were said impact me.
Are you a cat lady who has no stake in America?
I am not a cat lady. I am a cat lady and I have a stake in America.
Yeah. So it doesn't impact you either.
Well,
you don't fall into this. You don't fall into this narrative.
Well,
and most people recognize you don't fall into this narrative.
Well, most normal, healthy thought-provoked people who actually know that I don't fall in that category, or people like me. But
and I guess I'm frustrated with I can't wrestle with the extremists. So why am I spending the time and energy to deal with extremists?
Because they're shaping a lot of people. That's why. Because you don't think that way and I don't think that way. But I know my concern was that a lot of people do think that way. And then it makes it more solidified and it makes it harder for people that do struggle, that do get impacted by this, that don't get their choices to be able to do what they want with their lives, their bodies, their things, be able to actually move forward, to have the same opportunities without being told that they're getting them because they are female, because they are Black, because they are these things. That's, it's not like new, but it just seems like right now it's like, wow, the gaslighting is just unbelievable out there. But the narcissistic side of things, it's quite something. So anyway, I'm just saying. That was a better conversation than I expected, though, between you and I this week. Thank you.
We're capable of good conversations.
What?
We're capable of good conversations.
We are. Last week, I don't know. You were just off your game.
I wasn't off my game. I just didn't want to get sucked into it.
Oh, you did, though. You did.
Well,
you did, though.
Yeah.
Because, I got lots of feedback on it. You just didn't see the feedback on here. Oh, I didn't even see. Oh, we had comments. You didn't even tell me we had comments. I couldn't see those.
Joanne cites the separation of church and state. As a constitutionalist, I have to remind people that the separation of church and state is to protect the church, not to protect the state. But that's another story.
God. By the way, if you want to talk, if you want to talk about the Constitution, by the way, the Constitution also doesn't have anything about the word "she" in it, but that doesn't mean that she isn't included. Just so you know. Let's see. Hi. Oh, Kate says hello to you.
Hi, Kate.
Kate, you used to bash me for TikTok and now you're just hypocritical. Yes, Kate. Kate, by the way, your TikTok last night was really lovely and inappropriate, but we can talk about that later. Anyway. What is it? Okay. So, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure this goes back to other conversations.
Yeah. Joanne, there used to be, that's what Joanne was saying.
Yep.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's a whole nother thing. Oh, that's a whole nother topic, another gaslight. What did Ryan say? How would you advise a provider trying to provide good information against the masses? It feels like for person with good information, there's 25 other people who are confidently wrong. It's daunting and frustrating to battle.
Yes.
Yes. So my advice to provide people with good information is that they do the triangulation. So if it's news related, right? We're talking about here. I'm a big fan of. I watch multiple networks. I watch to get everything. I love BBC, and I love listening to Al Jazeera because they have quite a little take on what goes on in this country. Mm-hmm. Then of course I watch Fox, and then that grows old really quickly and I have to say that I grew up so that people understand. I grew up in a household where every TV was on when Fox came to be a thing. I'm sure that my household still is like that Fox is on, and it's just nauseating because it loops all day, obviously, mm-hmm. I'm like, oh my God, stop. So Fox and then CNN, but most of the time I go to the outsources. So advising people to take things with a grain of salt, identify what it is that's pushing you. Don't just react. Like I didn't just jump and react last week to my thing that happened when I left here, not the thing here, because that was just you, but whatever. So I just expect that from you, Lou. But when, understanding that, like,
constitutional adherence, I'll take pride in that.
we are not, you do not want to have this conversation. I'm so battened down on the hatches this week for your constitutional stuff that I could just have a full conversation with you, but we're not going there. I'm trying to answer Ryan's question. So the advice being, there's so many things that you can actually tell your clients or tell people around this is like, really look for different areas of facts. Look for what sounds realistic, reasonable, and rational. It doesn't, you can't, oh, well, you can, there's people that talk about certain things. And then when you put facts in front of them, they'll be like, oh, and then they'll be like, well, but I'm still going to do it. Like, it's like, you have to really get people to look at lots of different things. So if it has to do with the political environment right now, for instance, I always say people listen, read, talk to people, get away from only people, if you're only getting one side, try to get around other people that have other opinions. So that like you and I have conversations. When they're on air, they're a lot.
That's so funny.
Well, because on air they change from what people. Oh my God, excuse me. If people could hear us when we weren't on air, it would be very different. They'd have a very different opinion, I think, about our conversations. But when we're on air, we both tread different lightly, just because we're on air. But Lou and I actually agree about a lot more things than people probably think, and we sit together in that space a little bit better.
That's a societal description,
right?
If we could remember that, we'd be a lot better off.
Right. So, and I think that telling people that really finding what is it that's pushing them, not just the thing itself. Don't take it for the surface. Find out why it's triggering them and how it's impacting them. Because if it's not, like, most, me, right? You would, I think you would agree, Lou, that 99.9% of the things are like, whatever for me, like, but you get me on one and then all of a sudden I liken it to the whole gaslighting thing. I'm like, yeah, that's it. So really having people do that. So triangulate, Ryan, and getting people to see if things are reasonable, rational, realistic to the norm, to a baseline norm. And then also to really look at, what's driving you to have the reaction that you're having so that you can respond appropriately or not at all. Because sometimes the best response is no response.
Often.
Except in the cat lady thing. Because that one really, So, but anyway.
Can I give him I'll give him the advice my pediatrician gave me.
Oh, there we go.
When Sarah was first born and I brought her to this pediatrician for the first time, my wife and I brought her for the first time. And the question was, okay, when she's going to get sick, at what point do I bring her into you? Or what point do I get help? And the answer was trust your instincts.
Right.
And we knew nothing. And but that lays, and it lays here too with all this information, taking the information, trust your instincts.
So late in the show for me to have a response to that. So yes, and ... I will add on to that then next week. Yes, and there's a yes and.
Right.
So I won't go into that this week. So anyway,
do your critical thinking, triangulate, and then trust your instinct.
From that, yes, I would say yes. There's a good quick way to wrap up what I was going to say, but I'll still do the and ... for next week and come back to it. Hey, so everyone have a great week, and I will see you next week.
That was a quick out.
What?
That was a quick out.
Well.